Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. Today's special guest is Maureen. Maureen, how are you?
I am great, Bernadette. It's so nice to be here today with you.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you because of what you do and your experience with it. But before we dive into this topic today, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am a physician life coach. I help parents who have chronically ill kids. I help them to learn to thrive in life rather than just survive, and help them reduce stress, learn to balance life, learn to do better in relationships, because of how overwhelming life can be when you have a chronically ill child.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. What you do, is it based on experiences and things you've experienced?
Yeah. So the I'll kind of tell you the quicker version of my life story and how I got here. Growing up, I really had two dreams: a dream to be a mom and a dream to be a physician. I was very blessed in my life, and I have three kids. I graduated from medical school. When I was a pediatric resident, my second child, who was 6 months old at the time, was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, which is a type of pediatric cancer. My life kind of crumbled at that point in time, and she went through surgery, chemotherapy, the whole works. The I kind of came out of a dark place, because I recognized the fact that I had all of these thoughts that were leading me into this bad path.
Mm.
Then fast forward through the years, of course, I remained worried about her and worried about the possibility of a recurrence of her cancer. When she was 12, I got to be the physician to diagnose her with type 1 diabetes. And once again, my world kind of came crashing down, and lots of different ideas came into my head, like, why me again? Why her again? The I realized that I couldn't go down the same kind of dark place that I was before, and learned a lot about coaching, and listened to lots of podcasts. It changed my life. And I, through my physician career, I became very well known in the education world in medicine, where I would help train interns, residents, fellows, and I was doing a lot of mentoring in that role.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to become a certified life coach to help with mentorship in my role as a physician leader. And I did quickly learned, though, that the tools that I now knew how to use in the coaching world were actually helping my patients and their families that I was taking care of in clinic. So it was kind of a beautiful realization that I can use my experiences of what I went through as a parent of a chronically ill child, and really use and help families apply those tools to help them in their lives, so they have a very different journey than I went through.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And first of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That is a lot. And especially as a physician, knowing what your child is going through. It's one thing to be parents and not know and not have knowledge, but you still know at the time, what was happening to her. I, I,
Right.
I can't wrap my head around it, to have a child that is sick.
You
That
know,
must have
it's
been
so, yeah,
heartbroken. Wow.
it's so funny that you say that
Mhm.
about, being a doctor, because I have had lots of people say, oh, it must have been easier
Mhm.
because you knew what was happening with your kiddo at the time.
Mhm.
And you are absolutely correct. I've never been a parent who wasn't a doctor, so I can't
Mhm.
comment with 100% certainty,
Mhm.
but it was really hard because I knew exactly what she was going to go through because I had taken care of patients with those problems.
Mhm.
But I want to make sure that your listeners kind of understand something too on what you said. And you started and you said, I'm so sorry that you had all of this.
Mhm.
And I at the time when I was going through it, I would have heard your words and been like, oh my goodness, like I
Mhm.
am too. I am so sad that I've had to go through this.
Mhm.
Now, though, like I have such a different perspective on things, which has helped greatly. And I look at all of these challenges that
Mhm.
I was given and my daughter was given. And I tell you, in every challenge, there has been blessings that have come from it. And I would not be the person I am today if I didn't go through that journey in my life. So I don't look at it as something I think people should be sorry for.
Mhm.
That challenges are given to us to allow us to grow. And yes, I wouldn't wish any of this upon my worst enemy, but I also wouldn't wish it to never happen in my own life because it was a very good way to learn and grow.
I literally said that yesterday. I said I wouldn't change anything that I went through because it
Yeah,
made me who I am today.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And you're right. And through those storms, we can learn, uh, and evolve and continue to grow.
Right.
And look what you're doing now. You're
Right.
helping those in need. Had if you didn't have the experience, yes, you could still help, but it would be a different lens of looking at things.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
That I wouldn't have the ability to use my experience and give people confidence that the work that I do now really does work because I have had it work for me. So yes, you're absolutely correct.
Mhm.
And it's all about choices, right? Like anytime we're presented with a challenge in our life, we have a choice. Like we could curl up in a ball and hide and be in the corner and not come out. And the experience absolutely is going to pass with time,
Yeah.
but you're going to be the same exact person. Or the other choice is no, face it head on, learn how to manage and process emotions, and allow yourself to, yeah, be sad and be in an uncomfortable place, but know that when you get on the other side of it, you're going to be that much better.
I love that you mentioned allowing because we don't
Mhm.
allow ourselves to process those kind
Right.
of very hard, traumatic, serious situations. We
Yes.
think we have to be strong and be something we're not, just for
Yes.
people to see how we're coping with what we're going through. And
Right.
when really in reality, we go home, we crumble. And
Yes.
very few people see us crumbling, not the public, sometimes not friends or even extended families. Maybe
Yes.
the people that we live with, They see
Yeah.
it. Sometimes they see it, sometimes they don't. We do have a very good talents and skills of kind of hiding those, right? I love that you brought the word allowing.
Yes.
When we allow, I think we can begin to heal and process things. Would you
Oh,
agree?
yes. Oh, absolutely. And it's so funny that you even picked up on that. But I was just having a conversation last week about allowing and processing emotions, and
Mm,
that the I realized in my experience with my daughter that parents who have kids with health issues,
mm.
they're really good at lying. And what I mean by that is people would, when I would go in for my daughter's oncology visits, people who I knew at the hospital would say to me, like, "Hey, Maureen, like, how are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm fine. I'm fine.
Mm,
I'm fine." And oh, I was so not fine.
yeah.
And but it was because I felt like if I was vulnerable
Mm,
to the people who were asking, that I would really have to be vulnerable with myself,
mm,
which means that I was going to have to admit to myself
mhm.
that I was scared. I was really scared that I was going to lose my daughter. And I didn't want to think about that, because that fear is such a powerful emotion sometimes. So instead we like lie and tell people we're okay.
Yeah.
And I was describing it as like it is like taking a beach ball and
Mm.
shoving it underwater.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. And it's a matter of time before it surface. Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry, you're frozen for a little bit there. Oh, there you go. Sorry, I lost you for a minute.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry,
So
go ahead.
I was saying it is like a beach ball, where you take a beach ball and you shove it underwater, and you can hold it underwater, but eventually you have to let that beach ball go.
Mhm.
And when you do, that beach ball comes like flying up in the air, right? Well, emotions are exactly the same. When you keep them like shoved down, they'll eventually reappear, and they'll reappear at times when you're not expecting it, or times that aren't practical to be able to process those emotions and allow them. So being vulnerable for sure is the first step in all of this honesty with emotions.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. What was your childhood like? Would you say how you were raised played a significant part in the way you handle when your daughter was sick?
Oh, that is such a great question. And I don't think I've ever had anyone ask me that question before. But I'm sure it did. My parents were kind of the stereotypical, like, leave it to beaver parents,
Mhm.
where the dad was strict and went to work, and the mom stayed home with the kids, and like would never discipline us, would say, wait till your father gets home. But the it for them, because of the way their generation grew up,
Mhm.
it's their comfort with expressing emotion
Mhm.
is challenging. And so I'm sure it played a role in how I dealt with my daughter's situation, because I always viewed my parents as like super strong individuals.
Mhm.
And yeah, they were strong, but they also have emotions. And so I didn't witness as a kid them processing emotion, which then becomes like, oh, I can't do that. Like
Mm.
mom and dad didn't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. Did you always wanted to become a doctor? Were they
Always,
supportive of that?
always. And in fact, as a kid, I like a mom and a doctor were the two things. And I would con the neighborhood kids into getting a bunch of baby dolls. And I don't know if you remember those like little sugar candies that are stuck to the paper,
Yeah.
and they're like little dots. I would peel them off the paper and administer them to the neighbor kids like it was medicine, because I was the doctor already when we were kids. So always, always.
That is so cool. Do you have some very fond, memorable childhood memories that you've passed on to your kids?
That I created for them, or memories
You
from my
created,
child.
yeah, from your own that you passed on to them.
Yeah, I would say, the love of reading absolutely, I think, got passed on to my kids. And
Mm.
the one of the things that I also really remember fondly is my mom attempting to sing. And my mom cannot sing. I mean, she is tone deaf, like cannot sing. And but she would always try. And that love of music really is also something that I had passed on to my kids. I can't sing either, but I tried. And thankfully, my kids, all of them, very talented when it comes to music, and know how much music can play a role in providing mental health space, where it can help with your mood. If you need to focus, like there's music there to help you. If you need to calm yourself down because you've had a crazy busy day, music is there to help you. And so I think that music love is really something that came from the way my mom really tried to express love, was her attempt to kind of sing. Even though she was bad at it, I still appreciated it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the healing power of arts,
Yes.
all types of,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Um, so what does leadership mean to you?
Leadership to me means helping to guide people. And I really, being in the kind of coaching space now, I help people develop personal leadership.
Mhm.
And that, which I think is a little bit different than just leadership in general. I was in the Army for 29 years.
Mhm.
And so being a leader was something I was very accustomed to. It was a role I was very familiar with. And, but I think now in my role as a coach, I want people to understand that they can be their own leader, and they don't need somebody to tell them what to do during the day. They don't need someone to edit an email, that they don't need someone to help them set goals. We can do all of that ourselves. And it's funny, when we think about leaders, immediately that comes to mind is the either a bad leader or a good leader. Like examples of them play in our mind that we've encountered in our own life. And you know what? Like we inside of us are, through personal leadership, can act to ourselves as a bad leader or a good leader. And we have a choice always in everything that we do. And so it's really, leadership is really just guiding, and guiding to where you're making decisions. And it can't be guiding to a place of indecision, because leaders really need to make a decision, move on, and accept the consequences of that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. As a life coach, can you give me some scenarios or examples of some of the many tools you use for clients?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that I love teaching clients is something that I learned through my certification, which is called the model, which is basically circumstances that we get in our lives
Mhm.
are not positive or negative. They're just neutral. The any challenge, anything that happens in our lives is just neutral. It's really our thoughts about that circumstance that lumps it into a category of being positive or negative. The thoughts that our brain creates, though, goes on to create feelings that we have, and those feelings lead to actions in our lives.
Mhm.
Those actions give us the result of our human experience. So, for example, the my daughter having diabetes, that was neither good nor bad. That was just a fact that was very neutral.
Mhm.
I made it through the thoughts in my brain be bad. And the thought of like, I don't want her to have this, or she's already been through this before, or I know exactly what this means. And it's a lot of work and a lot of headache and a lot of risk. Those thoughts lead to me being uncomfortable and scared, and the fear then drives the actions, which then again goes back to, well, if I'm scared, I can crumble in a ball in the corner and just hope and pray this isn't happening. And the result is, well, I'm not there as a loving mom to support her going through this experience. So it, by knowing and understanding how tricky our brain is,
Mhm.
and when clients understand that, it really helps them when they're going through and experiencing different circumstances in their lives.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, sounds like mindset is a very important ingredient to success
Yes,
in doing better.
yes,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. I want to say thank you for your service. I know it's almost
Oh, thank you.
here. You're welcome. Here in Canada, we have Remembrance Day. It's November 11th, and I know there's
Yes.
Memorial Day in the States,
Um,
correct?
yep.
Okay.
There is Memorial Day. There's also Veterans Day. Veterans Day is
Oh,
November 11th here in the US too.
oh.
So Memorial Day is in May, and that's when we remember folks who have been lost through military service. Veterans Day is when we celebrate anyone who has served in the military.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Thank you for explaining it. I didn't
Yeah, of course.
That's so
Of
fun.
course.
Yeah, we only do Remembrance Day, November 11th, and
Yeah.
we were the poppies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for explaining.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Thank you. Yeah, you're also an author. How many books do you have?
I just have one book,
Okay.
and the book was kind of part of my journey on where I am right now. It started as a project that my kids asked for, because they would always ask me, like, "Hey, mom, like, tell us the story of when Kylie had this happen, or when this happened to Kylie," or and so I took on writing the book to document these stories for my kids and their kids and their kids' kids.
Yeah.
Well, in writing the book, I realized that, you know what?
Mhm.
Our stories can really help others. And I then kind of changed the focus of the book to where it wasn't just about my daughter, but it has stories of patients I took care of and lessons that I learned from the experience of being a mom, of being a physician, of watching and observing other parents. So it's a book filled with stories and lessons that can help parents who have chronically ill kids.
Those are the best books. I devour them. I absolutely love them. When did your book came out?
It came out in December of last year,
Oh.
and people always ask me, "Well, are you going to write another book?" And I have to tell you, it's almost like asking a woman after she's given birth, "When are you going to have your next baby?" And there has to be enough time
Yeah,
between them to like
yeah.
make the experience reasonable to take it on again. Because one of the things I didn't realize when I took on this project of writing this book, I thought I was going to crank this out in a weekend, because all of, telling stories, like I can tell stories all day long. And all of these stories, like I lived. So it wasn't even creating a story, it was just retelling a story that happened to me.
Mhm.
What I didn't realize was that telling the story in excruciating detail for readers to understand what it was happening was really hard emotionally for me.
Mhm.
That I would have a writing session and need to like close my laptop and be like, I need to put this away right now.
Mhm.
But in the end, when I wrote the last chapter and wrote the last sentence and I closed my laptop for the last time, it was such a healing experience to have all of that out there. That going through that was what we were talking about at the beginning,
Yeah.
that it is at the time when my daughter had cancer, I didn't know about coaching tools, and didn't know about processing emotions or allowing emotions, and really going through that experience again through writing the book allowed me to do that. And it was such a healing
Mhm.
thing to be able to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like ripping a bandage and reopening
Oh,
the wound
yeah.
and stitching it and then putting bandage on it again.
Yes.
I often find most of us have situations like that, that we must reopen those wounds and scars just to look at them or to remember the significance
Right.
of them.
Yes.
And I know so many people are grateful for what you're doing, for your story,
Yeah.
even though it was hard to do. Speaking of hard, were there some tools and resources that helped you on your journey while you were writing and going through your daughter being sick?
Um, tools that help me with writing, or tools that help me with going through my daughter's stuff?
The second one.
Good. Tools
Yeah,
that help me
yeah,
with my daughter's stuff.
yeah.
So I would say the when she was going through cancer,
Mm,
the I the tool that really helped me was being aware of mental health. And that's because I was in the medical community, right? So we were always talking about mental health and depression and all that kind of stuff.
mm,
So I had awareness of that. I There wasn't a specific tool, but I I'll give you an example of what I mean.
mhm,
That when Kylie was sick and she went through chemo and surgery, I took a leave of absence from work while she was going through all that. Well, then she got, everything's going to be fine. She didn't need any more chemotherapy. So it was time for me to go back to taking care of patients. I went back to taking care of patients, and I was a pediatrician, so moms would come in with their child with an ear infection, or dads would come in with a kiddo with a rash, or a school physical to do. And I realized that I was leaving work every day. And after seeing these patients,
mm,
really because, like, don't they understand what I just went through with my daughter? And this rash does not even compare to what I just went through with Kylie.
mhm,
And so that went on for several months. But I knew enough about mental health to be able to realize, like, you know what, Maureen, like, you wanted to be a doctor your entire life, and you have a gift that you can help somebody else who's worried about their child. Right now, because I was stuck in this world of comparing my struggles to their struggles, I was getting the joy sucked out of me. And I knew that if I didn't change, that I was no longer going to enjoy being a physician.
mm,
And I needed to redirect my brain into understanding, no, I need to focus on how I can help these people. Just like I wish somebody could take away my worry when my daughter was diagnosed, that I can take away their worry right now. That, yeah, it's a no big deal rash, but in their mind, they think that rash is terrible and their kid may die from that rash. And I get to have a gift of giving them the knowledge that, no, your kid's going to be okay. So the tool at that time was really just being aware of how our brain is uh, is smart, but it can work for us or against us. Um, when Kylie when I went through things again with Kylie when she had diabetes, I will say that the biggest tool that I had during that time, because I knew I didn't want to go back to that space I was in before, it was podcasts, quite honestly. Like, I would listen to podcasts nonstop to learn, how do I prevent my mind from just spinning on all of these negative thoughts. And that is the tool that really helped me during that time.
wow, that's a powerful tool. Lots of tools to have. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
podcasts. I think your episode that we're doing right now is going to be tools for other people. which is very neat. I love listening to other podcasts too. It's fascinating.
Yes.
What is diabetes? I've heard of it. I don't know what it is. I still
Oh, okay. Yeah. So everybody, when they eat food, that their bodies secrete insulin from, and so that insulin um, comes from someone's pancreas. Um, Insulin helps with lowering somebody's blood sugar.
Mm,
When there's two different types of diabetes, there's type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is a more adult diagnosis where your pancreas makes that insulin, but your body really isn't seeing it. And so you have higher blood sugars, but it can be managed with diet and exercise. Type 1 diabetes is very different. That type 1 diabetes is what my daughter has. It's when your own body has attacked the pancreas and has killed the pancreas, so it doesn't make insulin anymore. So anytime that she eats food that she needs she now wears an insulin pump, but she needs to give herself insulin, because if she doesn't, her blood sugar will just continue to rise and rise and rise.
oh,
So, and it's very dangerous to have really high blood sugar. It's also very dangerous if you give yourself too much insulin,
mm,
because it lowers your blood sugar, and lots of organs in our body, like our brain, our heart, needs sugar in order to operate. So having really low blood sugar is bad. Having really high blood sugar is bad. So it creates this environment where you have to be smart about what you're eating and dosing the insulin based on what foods that you eat.
mm. Oh, okay, okay, that makes sense. What are some symptoms would someone have if they have
Yeah.
undiagnosed type 1 and type 2 diabetes?
Yeah. So the symptoms are very similar because the result of both is high blood sugar. How they got there is a little bit different. Like I said, the type 1s that their body attacked itself. Type 2 is their body isn't really recognizing the insulin. So having high blood sugar makes people urinate very frequently. It makes people lose energy, so they feel like they're that they're not able to function and just tired all the time. It makes them really thirsty. And you know, when my daughter was diagnosed, she was a ballet dancer, and uh, she came home from a retreat and was just drinking, and going to the bathroom. And I was like, wow, like what's the deal? Like, why are you,
Yeah.
what's going on with you?
Mhm.
She then went to school the next day, and it was a school for the arts. And she texted me from school and said, Mom, something's wrong with me, that I have peed 12 times today. And so I thought, she's got a urinary tract infection, because a UTI can cause similar symptoms. I brought things to her school to test her for urinary tract infection so that we can get antibiotics, because her school was close to where the pediatrics clinic was. And lo and behold, like, she had diabetes. On the way to the hospital, we were talking about diabetes, and she said, Mom, is that why I can't jump in ballet class? So there's the grand jetés are big jumps in ballet, and all of a sudden she started having a really hard time of jumping high enough to be able to do this ballet move, and she kept getting in trouble by her teacher because of it. Well, in retrospect, it was all because she had high blood sugar. That even though I said low blood sugar is bad because your organs need sugar to survive, high blood sugar is bad too because your body can't really process it right. So the muscles get very sluggish. So the symptoms, like you asked, are drinking frequently, urinating frequently, being very tired.
You just described most of my symptoms. Wow, interesting. Wow, that's really cool. That's good to know. Yeah, I'm on mental health meds, so I don't know if it's side effects or not, but
Right.
yeah, I would say it's a common struggle, with fatigue, but it's finding
Yes.
out a diagnosis and what's wrong. And
Yeah.
sometimes, unfortunately and sadly, it does take a while for patients
Yeah.
to get
Right.
diagnosis. Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah. You're a pediatrician.
Pediatrician. Yep.
I
Yep.
only know that's a child doctor for kids,
Yeah. That's
correct?
right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And
Yep.
you're also an allergist
I am
and
immunologist.
thank you.
Yep. Yep.
I'm struggling with they're fancy words. Yeah. Yeah. What are the roles of an allergist and immunologist?
Yeah, sure. So an allergist immunologist is someone who's an expert on the immune system.
Mm,
So we see patients whose immune systems are overreacting to the environment, like folks with hay fever or allergies to dogs or allergies to foods like peanuts or fish or soy. So some patients have an overactive immune system. Some patients have an immune system that doesn't work, and we take care of them too. Those patients have problems with having lots of infections because their immune system isn't working to help fight those infections. And
yeah.
there's lots of different reasons for both, but the allergy and immunology kind of goes hand in hand because it's just being an expert on the immune system.
Mm. What is the immune system? I've heard of it. Is it the lungs, the nostrils? I don't.
Yeah. No, you have heard of lymph nodes, the
Yes.
little like lumps that you feel sometimes in your neck.
Mhm.
Well, those lymph nodes and the spleen and your bone marrow all create cells that help your body to fight infections. And so the immune system is all of those specific cells that help you fight infections. And your body does a very strategic way of having those cells mature to protect you from infections now and infections in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome to know. What happens when someone can't fight, bad infections or anything in their environments?
Yeah. So the when someone can't fight it, it that question is somewhat tough because it depends on the infection that they have. For example, a bacterial infection can be treated with antibiotics. A viral infection, sometimes we just need to let it ride its course. There are some medicines out there that can help treat viral infections, but there's not many. When somebody is having a tough time fighting an infection, it then makes me, as an immunologist, go down kind of a detective route to figure out what specific cell in their immune system isn't working right. And the not to get super geeky on you,
Oh, so
but
good.
there are B cells, T cells, and NK cells, which are the kind of top cells of your immune system. Depending on which one isn't working, would make us treat a patient differently. For example, if somebody's B cells aren't working, we can actually do something about it and give them immunoglobulins or antibodies to help them fight an infection.
Mm.
If their T cells aren't working, though, that is very dangerous, and the patient needs a bone marrow transplant in some circumstances. So the treatment depends on which type of cell isn't working.
Okay, can you tell me the difference between white blood cells and red blood cells? I thought we just had
Oh,
cells.
yeah, that great question.
Yeah.
So white blood cells are your immune cells. So those
Okay.
B cells, T cells, NK cells that I just said, those are your white blood cells. They help you fight infections.
Mm.
Red blood cells, they are the cells that bring oxygen to your different organs in your body. So they bring oxygen and they help with the exchange of carbon dioxide. So somebody who doesn't have enough red blood cells,
Mhm.
they have anemia, which I'm sure you've heard of, and they get very tired too, right? And the reason for that is there's not enough oxygen carrying cells in their body. But white blood cells, when a patient is having trouble fighting an infection, we use the number of white blood cells as a clue to which specific cell in their immune system is having a problem.
Oh, wow, very interesting. Yeah, I used to have low white blood cells.
Mm.
I've had to
Mm-hmm.
do blood work, and I don't know if it was medications I was on for
Mm-hmm.
schizophrenia and mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always been puzzled by that because it
Mm-hmm.
was nothing with my immune system. They were just low, and doctors had to keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different reasons why people can have low white blood cells. And but it's interesting too, because we have in medicine like a category of what a normal range is, right? Some people may be lower than that. Some people may be higher than that. And that may be okay. That it doesn't, we use that normal range to help kind of clue us in on, hey, we need to pay attention to this person's white blood cell, like your doctors did. But we're not going to get too fired up about it unless it starts causing problems or it starts continuing to go the wrong direction. Maybe this is just where this patient's cells lie, and they're outside of this normal range, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Let's dive a bit deeper into allergies
Mm,
because so many people have allergies. Some people know what they're allergic to, some people don't. And it's
right.
a continuous battle every day, every year, every season. To start, can you tell us what is an allergy?
Yeah. So just like what we were talking about with the immune system, our body makes antibodies that help fight an infection. Sometimes, though, our immune cells go a little bit crazy and make an antibody against something that exists in the environment. And we'll use peanuts, for example, as a food allergy. In some people, our B cells are making IgE, which is a specific antibody to peanuts specifically. So that antibody hooks on to an allergy cell called a mast cell. That mast cell is filled with histamine. You've heard of histamine before because people take antihistamines, right? So that IgE is hooked onto that mast cell, and it waits till the next time the person eats a peanut. So they eat a peanut, that peanut protein is recognized by that IgE that is hooked onto the mast cell, and it sends a signal to the cell to bust open and release histamine, which then histamine causes the person to puff up like a puffer fish and get hives, and they can't breathe, and all of those kind of allergy symptoms. So the bottom line is that an allergy to food or the environment, like a cat or a dog or an oak tree or Bermuda grass, it's all created by an antibody that our immune cell has made that then overreacts to that protein when we get exposed to it.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. That's good to know. What is the difference between sensitivity and intolerance?
So that's a great question. I'll use food as an example because I think that's the easiest way to explain the difference. There are lots of people who have lactose intolerance. What that means is when they eat or consume food that has lactose in it, like ice cream, their gut does not have an enzyme to process that carbohydrate. So they then get bloated, they can have diarrhea, bad abdominal pain, all those kind of things. An intolerance can mean that in that example, that your body doesn't have an enzyme to process it. An allergy, on what I was just explaining, if somebody has an allergy to lactose, they eat lactose, and it's not that they're uncomfortable, it's that they're having immediate symptoms of hives, swelling, all of those kind of classic anaphylactic symptoms. There's also a lot about food that we may or may not understand right now. And science is getting pretty good about understanding how important the choices we make for what we put in our body are. But it's tough sometimes to tell people if they have a sensitivity to a food. For example, there are some people that eat chocolate and get a really bad headache. I don't have a test to be able to tell that patient, hey, don't ever eat chocolate again because it'll give you a headache, and here's proof that it will. But through their own kind of testing of eating chocolate, and every time they eat chocolate they get a headache, I can tell them they are sensitive to chocolate. I don't know the exact
Mechanism.
mechanism for why that happens in that exact person, because science hasn't gotten there yet, but I can tell them it's not going to kill them like the peanut example that I talked about before, which is why we're much better at diagnosing those types of allergies rather than sensitivity and intolerance is a little bit harder because we just don't have good tests for it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for explaining it that way. Would you say most people develop allergies as kids or adults?
Oh, that is another fascinating question. And the reason that I say that's fascinating is because the in my lifetime, when I was a kid and went to school, I knew nobody who had food allergies. Like I couldn't tell you even one classmate that did. When my kids were in elementary school, like things had changed. Like there were peanut tables, like the peanut allergic kids sat at a table so that they wouldn't swap food with the non-peanut allergic kid. And my kids came home and like Sally, Johnny, Bobby, Susie all have peanut allergies. There is great data to show that one of the reasons why that is we have become too clean of an environment. And there's something called the hygiene hypothesis that our immune system, like I was saying before, likes to fight infections and it doesn't like to be bored. So when we're not fighting infections because we have hand sanitizer all at our disposal, that it's going to create allergies and become more overreactive. There's data that looked at kids who grew up in a farm environment. They had way less allergies than kids who grew up in a very sterile hospital-like environment. They had way more allergies because their bodies weren't fighting infections. There's also thought, though, that, and of course, I think the reason for having more allergies now is there's lots of things at play. But another kind of fascinating thing is when I started as a pediatrician, the American Academy of Pediatrics told pediatricians, hey, you tell parents that they shouldn't feed their kids milk until they're 1 year old, eggs until they're 2 years old, and peanuts until they're 3 years old. So around 2007, the American Academy of Pediatrics got together with the allergy organizations, and they came together and said, wait a minute, why are we having pediatricians tell parents this? Like, what's the data there? And they realized there is no data there. So they told pediatricians, okay, stop telling patients that because we don't really have data and maybe it's making things worse. Well, then fast forward from 2007 till now, they have figured out that no, we did miss an opportunity to allow a kid to become tolerant to proteins in the environment. So now pediatricians tell parents, feed your kids peanuts by 4 to 6 months of age. And you do that in a safe way. It's not feeding them an actual peanut that they can choke on. I just want to make that clear. But the exposing them to peanut protein at the age of infancy actually can decrease their risk of developing a peanut allergy.
Mhm.
So you had asked, like, is there more allergies in kids or adults? It is definitely more kids, because but as we continue to learn more, my prediction is that's going to flip and we're going to see more adults because of the things that we have learned and understood now over the years.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you for sharing what you were sharing about the farm and not being exposed to it. I can attest to that. I grew up in Haiti where kids play in the dirt, they
Oh,
run in
yeah.
the puddles and the mud and the rain, and they're just outside most of the time playing.
Yes.
We don't play in garbage, but there are dirts and we touch it, we play with it,
Yeah.
they lick it, eat it. I don't know.
Yes.
And then I came here, it's so clean.
Yes.
And I've never been so sick in my life
Yeah.
when I came to Canada. And I'm not joking. I still get so much colds all the time and fever
Right.
and aches versus when I was in Haiti. I
Yes.
didn't get that much cold, maybe 2, 3 colds a year. But here, every single month, there's something that I'm
Yes.
getting. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
continuous struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are some of the common allergies that you've noticed in the line of work that you do?
Oh, the I would say uh, there's definitely a lot of food allergies. And from what I was just explaining about food allergies. And so a lot of our messaging in terms of food allergies has changed. So food allergies, because of how dangerous they can be, has always kind of been top of mind. But then, I mean, the other types of allergies, I would say, is pollen allergies, worse probably in the spring and fall. So
Oh, yeah.
spring is trees and fall is weeds.
Mhm.
But there's plenty of people that are allergic to other things like grasses and cats and dogs and dust mites. But I would say spring and fall are probably kind of
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Bad seasons for patients, good seasons for allergists because we see lots of patients during that time.
Yeah, I'm like dying laughing inside because in the spring, just this year, I've never been allergic to anything that I know of. There's
Right.
a tree that, kind of faces our balcony. My kids, all of us were down, like my throat, my eyes, my everything, all three of
Yeah.
us. At one point, we went to see a doctor to give us some stuff to help manage it, but it was hilarious. All of us were just down.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was so bad, so bad. And here we get pollen. It's like snow. You see it in the grass,
Oh, yep.
all of it, all of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
What are some treatments that people can use when it comes to allergy?
And you're talking specifically about like spring and fall kind of
Yeah, yeah,
allergies? Yeah.
seasonal allergies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So seasonal allergies, I would say a fantastic thing that folks should do is one,
Mhm.
taking a shower after they've been outside when it's pollen season. Super important because if you're outside, all of that pollen is sticking on your skin and getting in your nose. If you come inside and you go to bed, you're sleeping in pollen. And so that's 12 hours of pollen exposure. So taking a shower after you've come inside, the keeping during those high pollen times, keeping the windows of their living space closed and using the air conditioning just for same reason, keep the pollen outside and avoid it inside. And then the third thing I would say is saltwater rinses of their nose. So some people like something called a neti pot, but there's also lots of saline or saltwater rinses that people can get at a drugstore that is safe. And the purpose of it is to flush out somebody's sinuses to where you're flushing out the pollen, but you're also flushing out the mucus, because when somebody has nasal symptoms and are having a bad time with allergies, they get a lot of mucus in their sinuses. Well, mucus, it can trap bacteria in your sinuses, so that mucus can then lead to a sinus infection. So if you rinse out your nose, you can help with minimizing your pollen exposure, but you're also preventing sinus infections. So those are the three big things: the taking a shower after you come inside, keeping your windows closed, and that means in the car too, and then using sinus rinses is very helpful.
How effective would you say over-counter medications or aside from sinus infection? Because there are so many. Sometimes I always get suggestion because I don't know if my 6-year-old should have what my 13-year-old is having or what I
Right.
should have as an adult.
Yeah. And I will absolutely say they are very effective.
Okay. hmm Alphabet. Yeah,
So
no
sorry.
worries. Oh, no worries. It's just internet that does that. Sorry, what were we talking about?
So there's lots of different allergy medicines that are available over the counter
Mhm,
that they all can work. They're a little bit different. So the big ones are ones like Claritin, Zyrtec, and Allegra. There's store brand products of each of those two.
mhm,
They're all a little bit different in how they work. Of those, Claritin
mhm,
works sometimes. In a good chunk of patients, it doesn't work great. So Claritin is often not the one I tell folks to go for first.
mhm,
Between Zyrtec and Allegra, the Zyrtec, it can make people feel a little bit fogged. Allegra typically does not. So I oftentimes tell folks to try Allegra. Now, again, this goes to the caveat of you need to be careful about what other medicines you're on, what age patient that the person is, and also the cost of the medicine too is very important. If you can get Claritin for really cheap, that's where you should start. Like, don't listen to me, because it can work for somebody. There are other sedating antihistamines out there, like Benadryl is an example of a sedating antihistamine. So it'll work to take away allergy symptoms, but it'll also make somebody sleepy. And I always caution my patients that you have to be careful when you're driving and taking Benadryl, because being a sleepy driver is just as bad as being a driver who's under the influence. So it's important to pay attention to that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I had to go see a specialist like yourself for my daughter. They did a bunch of tests. They put stuff on her skin or
Oh
arm.
yeah,
Some were
yeah.
itchy, some weren't. And yeah, she has a few allergies. Obviously, gnats is one of them. and an EpiPen. I wanted to
Mhm.
hear your perspective on an EpiPen and the urgency of having it when
Right.
prescribed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for someone with a food allergy, or a stinging insect allergy like bees, hornets, wasps, an EpiPen can be a life-saving
Mhm.
medication.
Mhm.
It is something that can act quickly when somebody is having an allergic reaction.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the way it works is, so I said before that when somebody has an allergy, that their mast cells bust open and release histamine. Well, histamine has lots of different effects in our body, one of which is causing our blood vessels to dilate and open up, which means that when your blood vessels are dilated, your blood pressure goes way down in the toilet. And if that happens, then your brain, heart, important things again, aren't getting the oxygen that they need to survive.
Mhm.
So the epinephrine, which is the medication in an EpiPen,
Mhm.
works by allowing those blood vessels to get tight again
Mhm.
so that it is able to maintain their blood pressure so that they're not going to have that impact.
Mhm.
Um, I always tell patients who have food allergies that you shouldn't be scared to use epinephrine. Like if I have a patient with a food allergy who ate a peanut at a party and they're like, oh my God, I ate a peanut. Oh my gosh, I'm getting hives and I'm starting to cough. Should I give this EpiPen or should I not?
Mhm.
Just give it. The worst it's going to do is make you feel like you drank a bunch of coffee. So it'll make somebody feel jittery,
Yeah.
but the earlier you give it in an allergic reaction, the better the patient outcome is. It kind of halts an allergic reaction in its tracks, so that it doesn't progress and make it a worse to treat reaction. So it's safe to give. If you're sitting there debating, should I give it? Should I not? Just give it. And don't ever let anyone tell you, you know what, you shouldn't have given it. Because
Yeah.
that doesn't make it, that
Mhm.
second guessing your response in the time is not helpful.
Mhm.
And I never question somebody who gave themselves an EpiPen.
Mhm.
Now, there's lots of like teenagers who mess around with EpiPens and
Yeah.
accidentally inject themselves. And yeah, they shouldn't have given themselves an EpiPen. Uh,
Yeah.
but if somebody's truly having some symptoms of an allergic reaction, they need to get that medication and use it quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, because some allergies are life or death. I've heard
Right?
some
Yeah.
pretty crazy, insane stories of people nearly dying from
Right.
an allergic reaction. And it
Yes.
happens every year, probably around the world.
Yeah. For
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. Have you ever had to give that to your kids, or they're good when it comes to allergies, or?
Um, uh, they are not. My youngest is has allergies to spring, fall, every kind of pollen. Um,
Yeah.
Guinea pigs,
Mm.
which we figured out because he came home with the guinea pig class pet for us to take care of on the weekend,
Yeah.
and he couldn't breathe and broke out into hives.
Oh, wow.
So he also got stung by a hornet and
Mm.
had anaphylaxis. And on two occasions had to use an EpiPen. So yes. I always joke that my youngest is like an allergy fellowship all in one little human body.
Mhm.
But he's got all sorts of, he's allergic to some foods, allergic to some pollens, allergic to animals, allergic to stinging insects. So yes,
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Well, I know that you work with parents, who have children or kids that are chronically ill.
yes.
What advice or anything you'd share with parents? Maybe they're watching or listening to this episode and they're struggling because it's a lot. What would you say to those parents?
I would say that there is hope, that um, you can really live a beautiful, joyful life,
Mhm,
even with a child who has health challenges.
mhm,
There is a lot of worry and a lot of overwhelm that goes on,
mhm,
but we have the ability, because we have a human brain, to
mhm,
be able to allow those emotions to be there,
mhm,
but they don't need to be driving our vehicle on our journey through life.
yeah.
And but it takes practice and it's work to figure out how to move them from the driver's seat to the trunk of the car. So they're still coming along for the ride, and that's all good.
Mm,
But it takes some effort to get the worry and overwhelm into the trunk.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but there's lots of things that go along with it. Guilt is another emotion, and the again living each day from a place of guilt will just burn us out as parents,
mhm,
because we want to be these exceptional caregivers to our kids. And doing that from a place of guilt, instead of a place of joy and love and hope, like, is not a very healthy way to live.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. Um, what are some key points that you want my audience to get from this episode?
I would say the key point is uh, to have the courage
Mhm,
to say, I need help. And that help can come in many different forms. It may be that courage may be just being honest with yourself. That courage may be getting a friend to chat with. It may be getting a coach to help you work through the problems. It may be talking to your doctor so that you can see a psychiatrist to get help that way. There's lots of resources for help, but having that courage to take the first step to say, I need help, is really what I would love your listeners to
yeah.
come away from this episode hearing.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much. I have a psychiatrist. And most people
Good.
don't like to get I needed the help. Like with what I have, I needed the help. And I know there might be other people who need the help and they're scared and
Right.
they're fearful. And I love what you shared that to get it, to
Yeah.
get the help. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But, and, oftentimes we feel like if we ask for help, it means we have failed. And that's so not true. That's the story that we've created in our head. But the real story is that somebody who asked for help hasn't failed. They've actually won, because they're have have recognized the path that they're on and have now been able to use that to get on the right path. And just like what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode about growing, that's how we grow, is getting feedback and not being afraid to fail.
Mhm.
Asking for help is the biggest sign of strength, not failure.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Two questions for you as we wrap up this episode. What is the meaning of life for you?
The meaning of life is having a beautiful human experience,
Mhm.
meaning we're going to have ups and downs,
Mhm.
that there are is not a life that is full of unicorn and roses,
Yeah.
but the meaning of life is being present in the highest of highs and enjoying them to the fullest, but also being present in the lowest of lows and understanding that we're strong and it will pass and life is full of both.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Where can my listeners find you and support your work?
Sure. I would love them to find me on my website. So MaureenMichelemD.com. And that's Michelle with one L, not two. So MaureenMichelemD.com is my website. Or my book is on Amazon. It's called Reclaiming Life. And I would love for your listeners to check it out too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is it Dr. Maureen or Doc? I don't know if they use the last name or first name first.
So anything.
Maureen.
Dr. Maureen is totally fine.
Yes, thank you
Yes.
so much for your time, Dr. Maureen, for everything that you're doing, for empowering people, and most importantly, for your service, dedication, and for allowing me and my audience to be part of your chapter and journey.
I so appreciate you taking the time to interview me and allowing me the honor of sharing with your audience. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. You're welcome.